I have to ask you right off the bat on this issue, the debt ceiling. I know you want to become more outspoken about it. You're pushing Congress to reject these calls for catastrophe. I'm sorry. I think we saw the same thing pre-TARP, the same thing, and then all of a sudden Congress voted against TARP the first time, and we got on the verge of an economic collapse even faster. So do you really think this is good for the American economy? Forget the politics of it a moment. It may be good politics. Is this good for the economy?
Well, I think it is, Chuck. And first of all, good morning to you and to Savannah. Thanks for having me on the show. And I am against raising the debt ceiling, but I'm also offering a reasonable third way, another idea that I think would help the debate, and it's this. President Obama is offering a false choice between more debt and defaulting on our obligations to the federal government's outside creditors. I think what we could do is send a bill to the president that would say we're going to eliminate that false choice, at least for the time being, and sequence the cash flow that we do have, which is substantial, and pay the outside creditors first on their debt, our debt payments and the interest, and then put the backside pressure on the debate on the discretionary spending that the federal government has. So the credit standing of the United States federal government would be met completely, and the time would be extended for the debate, and the backside pressure on the debate then would all focus on the discretionary spending. At a minimum, this would buy substantial amounts of time to really tackle the tough spending decisions that should be made and keep getting delayed in the federal government's debate and the Congress's debate.
But, Governor, does this not amount to you hoping that Congress comes together and cuts spending substantially enough to live within its means? I mean, you talk about calling the administration's bluff in terms of their apocalyptic predictions if the debt ceiling were not raised, but isn't it quite a gamble to ask that Congress make these draconian cuts in spending with, frankly, a gun to their head with the risk of default in the U.S. economy?
Well, we're not going to default, Savannah. First of all, again, you notice Secretary Geithner, when really pressed on this issue, doesn't say we're going to default. There's enough cash flow to meet the outside debt and credit obligations of the federal government.
For a time being, for a certain amount of time, correct?
Well, what's really at issue is the intergovernmental borrowing between accounts within the federal government. So you can pay the debt service obligations of the federal government with the cash flow for the near and intermediate and maybe for even a longer period of time. So we take the default issue off the table. That's the point of my proposal. And then say to the Congress, we'll sequence the spending, pay those debt obligations with the interest as they're due, make sure the military gets paid and taken care of, and then let's have the debate on entitlement reform that everybody always gets on your show and shows like this and say, Savannah, Chuck, it's time to make the tough decisions, and they never do. The only way that the politicians are going to make the tough decisions is to put their backs against the wall.
Well, your proposal gets them half of the way by saying, all right, don't raise the debt ceiling, pay the creditors first. Can you go the rest of the way and say how you would propose to cut spending sufficiently to stay within the debt ceiling as it stands?
Well, this is not going to be easy, and the only way to really tackle in a substantial way the financial problems of the United States federal government is to restructure entitlement programs, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, which has got to be done. But the real issue here is the long-term entitlement and non-discretionary autopilot spending that the government engages in. And even if we could make some reasonable steps on that front, it would send a powerful signal, I think, to the markets and to the economy that we're going to be solvent and taking a more responsible approach going forward. But the point is, everybody flaps their jaw about making tough decisions. Nobody ever does. This is an opportunity, not a crisis. It's an opportunity to put the politicians back against the wall and actually get something done.